It's finally here. The most underrated thrill in DFS, in fantasy sports.
The MLB playoffs.
No, it is the NHL season. And honestly, never in my 31 years on this planet did I ever expect those words to come out of my mouth. Lee, you have converted me.
You're an open-minded guy, Brian. And when I first kind of came to you with this idea, you saw an opportunity, man. And as the deeper we looked into it a few years back, the more we realized with the combination of overlay, with really the lack of knowledge, I think, from a general standpoint of hockey analytics and just projecting what's going to happen. Combined with how fun it is, how thrilling it is, we jumped on board, and last season was really fun with our followers, and I know we saw a lot of folks do well. I know you did really well.
Maybe that's why I like it so much. Maybe just a little bit.
I think it has an effect, right? Considering you did win a pretty big GPP, but. Yeah, man, I'm fired up, man. It's been a quick off season as a Caps fan, celebrating the cup, but here we are, man. It's full steam ahead now.
Yeah, I think the Caps bender finally just ended, just in time for the regular season to start. But if you're just joining us, if you've never heard of us or you've seen us on Twitter, maybe, I'm Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy. The other guy on here, that's Walid. He's our other co-founder, our NHL mastermind. The brains behind all of our NHL content. And what we wanted to do with this podcast, keep it short, keep it simple. If you've heard this before, you're like, okay, there's no way NHL is that fun, that profitable. I don't care about NHL. Myself, right. I didn't know more than 3 players before 2 seasons ago. Doesn't matter. It's so profitable. It's more profitable than preseason DFS, which is maybe hard to believe for some of our newer members, given our success there. But what we wanted to do with this podcast, kind of lay out how to be successful in NHL DFS, how to use our tools at occupyfantasy.com to be successful and really give yourself, because in NHL, this is one of the few sports where you can get a lot of opportunities each month to win big prizes and bigger tournaments without having to reach into your wallet or your bank account or your DFS account to enter these big tournaments.
No, completely. And it's really our bread and butter, something that, you and I it's at the crux of our contest selection every night. Satellites, 25 cents, 50 cents, $1, $2, whether it's for the $33 tickets or for the $200, $333 massive end of the season. We're always targeting them. It's a very successful strategy. The overlay, first of all, is nuts. You will have satellites where it should be 700 people, but only 200 people join. So, do the math. You have literally at least three times more of a chance to get a ticket in a situation like that. And it's not just the overlay. We don't want to make it seem as though it's a big part of it, but the satellite strategy that we've been using regularly each day with NHL DFS has led us to be in a position where we have 15, 20, sometimes 30, 40 tickets for a mass GPP. And once a month, man, it feels like it's that major, if you were a golf player, you have that major event you look forward to. And boy, was it fun, man.
Oh yeah. It's incredibly fun. You look forward to those nights each and every month. And I'll ask you a few questions here in a second, specifically for our newer players. What is that strategy? What does it look like? How are you entering satellites? We'll get there in a second. But first, I wanted to start with the basics, the breakdown, the daily process for hockey. We have on our website right now, occupyfantasy.com, the beginner strategy guide. And that is free for everyone. And it really runs down. Yeah, it'll always be free. And it really runs down the basics of how to play fantasy hockey and DFS. And how to be successful. But just from your mouth, explain to people, what is the process like on a daily basis? Because, it's similar to MLB where it's a daily sport. It's like NBA, but the processes couldn't be more different.
Yeah, no, I agree there. And then, like you said, definitely check out the just the NHL strategy guide or just Google NHL DFS guide if you don't want to read what we wrote. There's plenty of, I think, good information on this because, yeah, like let's face it, as much as, I love hockey, I know that it's not the most popular sport in the world. I know that even you, like 2 years ago, probably couldn't name more than 5 players, right? So it can seem overwhelming, and you can almost think, well, why would I play? I'm already at a competitive disadvantage. I can't name 5 players, right? Trust me, you're not. It's going to take some learning. It's going to take an open mind, but you can really pick this up pretty quick. And the daily process, like you said, it's not like NFL where it's an entire week ahead of time. It's not like NBA where you have to kind of wait until 6:55 to make sure who's in and who's out of the lineup, or is Popovich benching 4 starters. But what usually kind of our daily process, right? Morning skate is kind of like the practice of hockey, right? And this is where we get our first look at who we expect to be the starting goaltender, what lines do we expect teams to roll out, and these things don't change very often. In a way, it's kind of like a baseball lineup, right? Like some guys, like they always hit third or fourth, and just like some guys, they'll always be on that top line. But other guys move around, and that's where we want to kind of first find and identify value. If there are cheaper guys playing on the power play or playing on the top line, and you can get them for a bargain, right? So, but before any of that, it all comes back to the betting odds, the line movements, right? That's kind of the foundation of at least how we first look at a slate. We want to see who's playing, who's favored, who are the goalies in net, what are the implied goal totals, who are the largest favorites, and what is the general breakdown of Vegas overseas betting. We want to make sure that you get a good grasp of it. Hockey lines, look, it's with football you usually it's the same, right? You kind of have your money line. What minus 220 means someone is like a heavy favorite, right? Or if you have someone that's minus 110, it's a very close game. But when it comes to the over-under, which is really, I think, kind of 2 things we look at in football. The over-under, right, is it 48 points, 42, 50, get a good idea of how high scoring the game is. And then the line, is it 3 points? Is it 6 points? Is it, 1 point? Those give you a good idea, right? With hockey, we don't really get that because, quite frankly, and there you can bet on the line. Usually it's always minus 1.5 goals. So let's say if a team wins by 2 goals, there's a certain payout or a certain money line for that. But we look at the implied goal totals based off the over-under and based off where the money line is. What are our goal projections for this team? And then we kind of work backwards. So I know I'm obviously elongating this explanation, but number one, we want to look at the betting odds, the line movement, who's in net, and the projected lines for that night from morning skate. And we also want to note injuries, who's maybe a potential scratch. Hockey, they keep it very mum, right? Mum is the word when it comes to certain injuries. You hear lower body, upper body, but you still have a good idea of who's going to play and who's not. Not 10 minutes before the game, but a handful of hours before.
Yeah, I can think maybe I can count on my hand the number of times last season where a player was late scratched or didn't play when he was expected to play, which obviously is way different than MLB when a lineup comes out an hour before, or obviously NBA when those late scratches happen all the time. And how you finished your explanation leads us perfectly into our first piece of content on the website, which will be every day for every main slate, the Daily Plug. But really quick, before I get into that, I want you to briefly break down, because honestly, I didn't know what lines were before I started following hockey. So just very briefly explain what the lines are in hockey, like on a team, and how the rotation works, and really what that means for someone who's never really watched or followed hockey.
Right. No, absolutely right. So usually and this is a very, very standard kind of way of hockey teams playing, and at any level. Teams will have four lines of three forwards and three pairings of two defensemen, right? So that gives you a total of 18 skaters, right? Now, not all skaters are created equally. You want your best skaters on the ice as much as possible in high leverage opportunities, power plays, right? When there's a face off in the opposing zone. So you'll see if you if you Google any team or you look at their lines, you'll see four lines of forwards. The top two lines are usually your money lines. The first lines will have the power play and superstar players, right? The second line will also include some of that, depending on how deep and good the team is. The fourth line, and these are guys that you usually see anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes a game, which is a lot, right? A hockey game is 60 minutes, and so you might think, well, even the best players are only playing at most, like not including defensemen, but forwards are only playing 25, 30% of the game, right? So each team, they keep their players fresh. Hockey isn't a game where you can have someone skate for 4 minutes straight. I don't care how good they are.
Right.
But it is important to identify every team is different. Some teams roll out their third lines more than other teams, right? Some teams are very confident in the scoring they have across their entire team. So don't take it as a universal way of looking at it. I'm not, there's some great values out there on third and fourth lines for DFS purposes. You'll find guys are getting power play time and they play on the third and fourth line. So, and then you have your three pairings of two defensemen. Once again, not all these pairings are created the same. Some teams have that one shutdown pairing. Other teams, count heavily on two. Some teams roll them out more even, right? And these things can change depending on coaching, right? Philosophy, game flow, what's going on, and also as injuries and things take place.
Yep, exactly. And if this sounds like a foreign language to you, don't worry. It may be overwhelming, but seriously, if you just read our free guide, our beginner strategy guide on the website, it all makes sense. And once you make your first couple of lineups, it'll flow pretty easily. Plus, we have the daily plug to guide you and really let you know, okay, here's tonight's slate. Here's how it looks. Here's what you should do. So, Walid, do you want to run through what you're thinking? Because our first daily plug is going to be tomorrow. We're recording this Tuesday, October 2nd, and this podcast can be listened to 4 months from now. This daily plug format isn't going to change. So what can people expect from our daily plug, which you can get with our standard membership, which is just a couple bucks a week?
Right. And the point we kind of joke about this when it comes to the daily plug. Like, we want people to be able to sit down for 5 minutes, maybe even less if they're a quick reader. And whether they're taking a poop at work or, getting a coffee break, whatever it is, we want you to really be able to digest the slate and be able to put everything into action very quick. Right now, I'm not saying rush your lineups. This is, the model is also a great way. It's where we get all our, live information based off, projected shots changing or the betting odds, or if we see someone, a large amount of sharp money just came down on this team, or, the model is your live dashboard. But, with the plug, you're going to get, number one, the betting odds, line movements, implied goal totals. We're going to cover the notable injuries and what that means for specific teams. If someone is getting a bump in the lineup because of an injury, we'll give you the top goaltenders, whether it's a high price stud or a backup goalie coming in a high value situation. We'll give you the popular stacks of the night. Right now, hockey, just like baseball, just like football, is a correlation dependent sport.
But even more so, like, this is the most correlated sport you can probably find.
Yeah, no, completely, right? Like, if you're going to have most of the time, lineups where all your players are from 2, 3, max 4 teams if you get like an isolated and like defenseman or something, right? The correlation is massive between centers and wingers, right? Top line centers and wingers wingers and, for on the top line, second line, people that share power play time, whether it's a defenseman like John Carlson sharing power play time with Evgeny Kuznetsov. There's actually a few good spots, and maybe tomorrow we can even publish it with the daily plug where we actually just give you the general correlation plays. But for the day, you'll get the popular stack, right? You'll get the sleeper stacks where you can get some leverage in a high risk contest. We'll give you the good value plays, forwards and defensemen of the slate to kind of sprinkle in your lineups. And then we'll tell you, the contest selection strategy and how much of your bankroll you should allocate. So hopefully in realistically 10 minutes of reading and digesting, you'll know what your plan of action is that night.
Yeah, and our plug is going to come out roughly the same time every single day. It'll be out after the morning skate, roughly between noon and 2 p.m. Eastern. And here's a little life hack. If you're at work, you don't actually have to poop to sit on the toilet. You can just go sit on the toilet and read the daily plug. You don't have to do your business. So there's a little hint for you guys. So, all right. So the daily plug is going to be a roadmap. Obviously starts from the top down, give you a high level picture, shrink it down to fit your needs, your bankroll, your playing style. That's what Occupy Fantasy is all about. Now, you mentioned the Occupy model. If you've been around before, if you've been a member, you know about our model for MLB, for NFL. The NHL model is going to be new and revamped, much quicker this season, very lean. And the idea will be to give you very quick information, who the top plays are. But then we also have our top line stacks and our top power play stacks. So once you run through really quickly, we're going to actually have a video that walks through the model to show you how we use it. But just really quickly, what can people expect from the model?
Yeah, it's awesome. So first of all, I am not the mastermind behind this. Big credit to our stats guy, Moose, right? And a lot of work went into just looking at previous years, finding correlations. And at the same time, we don't want to overwhelm people. Like we can, if we saw the back end of it, a lot of people would go crazy. And I know sometimes I go crazy looking at it. And I'm asking like, so yeah, what's going on here specifically? But yeah, we want this to be very easy to digest, right? Everything from the betting odds and the team totals and the line movement all the way down to projected shots and the prices of players and let's say hey, I've made my lineup, I need a winger that fits in under $4,200. You can narrow that search and it's very customizable, right? We want you guys it's a great tool. You kind of got to learn how to use it, but it's very quick to learn. Like I've never heard of anyone not understand how to use it after like a day.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you can sort different columns and then very quickly you'll see who the top plays are, where you can differentiate because it does have the projected ownership as well.
Right.
So you can
Absolutely.
see who popular plays will be. And this really helps us write the plug. We just pull all that information out, like the key information, and give it to you in the daily plug. But if you're a more advanced player, you're making maybe multiple lineups and you're using the satellite strategy, which we'll talk about in a second, then the model is really your friend. And I mean, like you said, just an incredible tool, back tested by tons of data. Yeah, long story short, Moose is a genius with the creation of that. So, all right. The bread and butter.
And to that point, though, like, the ownership projections, right? Where like tomorrow we have a 4-game slate and, a lot of people are going to be on the same plays. This, gives you a little insight as to just how much, who's going to be, how many people are going to be on the Maple Leafs versus maybe the Caps or the Bruins or, where can you find, a high projected team in a low ownership spot, because that's how you get leverage in high risk contests.
Absolutely. And good luck finding NHL projected ownership literally anywhere else on the internet. Last year, we were the only site to have it. That may change this year, but it's an incredible tool that you should use, especially if you're playing in the satellite strategy. So like I said, it's our bread and butter, and it's going to be different for FanDuel and DraftKings. DraftKings doesn't have as much, if any, overlay like FanDuel does, but the point remains because they have tons and tons of cheap satellites for similarly priced tickets as FanDuel does. So Walid, why don't you explain to people, one, how the satellites work, two, what is your thought process each day when you're entering satellites, and your long-term goal, your long-term strategy when it comes to getting tickets to GPP entries.
Completely right. This is the best part of DFS for us. So yeah, number one, look, we all, as much as we enjoy playing DFS, we're all trying to win money, and we're all trying to hit on a big prize. The reality is, some of these top prizes aren't exactly just spending your lunch money to get in, right? Like, if you want, like right now, I'm looking at this tournament. It's a $33 26 max entry GPP tomorrow. 891 folks. That's going to be the total pool. $33 entries, right? 5K to first. And then you look at it, and then you see if you finish outside the top 30, you're only making $75, right? So the point is, as much as people want to win these prizes and as trigger happy as they get entering these contests, it's a very dangerous way to make a living. And unless you can max enter, unless you can enter 20, what is it? I said 20, 26 entries for $33, which, I mean, let's do the math there. That's $858 in entries, right? So unless you have that, playing those contests are very risky, and you're going to run into people that there are some people that are very good and will have those entries and take your money. What you want to do is put yourself in a position to reap the same potential rewards while mitigating that risk by 3-4 times the amount, right? And that's where satellites come in. So each month, it's usually at the beginning, sometimes towards the end, but usually once a month, there is a tournament that each ticket is a $33 value, right? So these satellites only cost 25, 50 cents, and $1 to enter. It's on FanDuel. They always have overlay. Like right now, I'm looking at this 25-cent satellite tournament where the top 5 get the $33 ticket. There are 790 spots, currently only filled 88. We'll see. Tomorrow's opening day, so it'll probably be more filled than usual. But the point remains, you're going to get massive overlay here. There are a couple ways to do it, right? You can create a handful of different lineups, throw 25 cents, let's say throw 8 lineups in for $2 and, just finally see what happens as far as diversifying your options. On the other end, there's also the idea of creating one lineup and entering it 5 times, right? And then when you hit, all of a sudden you get 5 tickets. That's something both you and I love to do.
Absolutely. And there are even satellites as low as 12 cents on FanDuel, 10 cents on DraftKings, which means players of any bankroll size can implement this strategy. But 2 key points. One, you don't want to go broke trying to qualify for tournaments playing satellites. So you really don't want to spend more than 20% of your daily allocation on satellites. So if you're playing $5, you probably shouldn't spend more than $1 each day playing satellites. Let your other $4 make you money to pay for those satellites, to pay for these big shots down the road. 2, once you actually get a ticket, you should do everything in your power, as long as you stay within that bankroll recommendation, of trying to get more tickets for that same contest. Because the more shots you have at that top prize, it's obviously the better. So if, let's say tomorrow night, we're fortunate and we qualify and we earn a $33 ticket. I don't know when exactly that contest is, but
actually, let's see.
Yeah, when is that first?
It's October 23rd, right? So you have about
basically 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So for the next 3 weeks after we get this ticket, we want to enter as many of those $33 satellites as we can, 12 cent, 50 cent, $1, whatever it may be, and try to get more. The more entries we have, the better chance we have at getting that top prize. And we're only using a fraction of our bankroll to do it. And the $33 GPPs aren't the only ones. They have the $7 ones or $9 ones on FanDuel. DraftKings has the $5 GPP. You can easily get a bunch of tickets to. And then for larger bankrolls, they have the $333 GPP that you can try to earn tickets to. Obviously, much harder to get those.
Right.
And the satellites cost a bit more. But the key here is try to get a ticket. And then once you do, try to get multiple.
Bam, right. And then you load up and come, that time once a month, you have a chance to win couple grand, right? And then we've obviously been on the winning end of those things, and it's real fun, man. And the bottom line is you're mitigating your risk. Worst case, man, like there has never been a month where we have spent like even half the amount on the satellite tickets as we actually got like, or on the satellite tournaments as we ended up getting in tickets. You know what I mean? Like,
Right. And not that doesn't even include the money we're winning in 100-player leagues, quintuple ups, single entry GPPs along the way that fit within our bankroll, that help grow our bankroll, at the same time giving us chances at these tournaments.
right.
So, yeah, I mean, this is the best way to play NHL DFS. And honestly, your strategy each night is going to depend on the slate. And Walid, you're going to do a great job outlining this in the contest selection. There may be a night where it's Saturday night, 4 or 5 games, and there really aren't that many safe plays. The goalies are kind of sketchy. There aren't that many values. And we may just say, hey, let's create 8 to 12 lineups, throw them in satellites. Maybe throw them in a $1 or $200 player league. Let's try to get some tickets tonight. There may be another night where it's a sole cash night, low risk contest. You can enter that one lineup you create that night, enter it 8 times into a 25-cent satellite, 12 times in a 12-cent satellite. And if your cash game hits, you get 10 to 12 tickets all at once. Like you said, it's really going to depend on what the slate is, and that'll dictate your satellite strategy for the night.
Completely. And do try and listen to us, but we can't control that, and players are different. So some people, they might be more into the satellite, strategy, and they find this is for them, and they spend a little more on their bankroll rather than maybe move some of the money from like the single entry tournaments or the 100-player leagues over. Some folks might be more on the cash side of things, but our insight that we're going to give you, the roadmap, is going to be based on the slate and based on where we see projected ownership and how we think we can take advantage of it. So trust me, like we don't just fart this out of our ass. It's worth, taking serious. The reason we bring this up is, we've had followers say, oh, we're still playing mass entry GPPs, even though we tell them not to. But hey, can't control everyone.
You're going to do what you want to do. We're only here to try to help you as best we can. We have a proven strategy to slowly grow your bankroll while giving you shots at huge paydays, which is not much you can really say. It's not very often you can have that. So, all right, let's move to our mailbag. We actually had a couple of Twitter questions for this episode, and Lead, I'll let you answer them. First one comes from Pit Panther. Greg, he's a member of ours. He asked, how do you differentiate cash and GPP lineups? And are you against line stacking in cash?
Great question, right? So to answer the first part of it, it really comes down to ownership projections, right? And the slate itself. With that said, it's hard to almost like, some nights you might think like, a certain cash lineup like looks high risk, right? Or vice versa. But it really depends on the slate and what our projected ownership is telling us. It's kind of a rule of thumb with cash games. You want to take on guys that are going to be highly owned, and with high risk contests, you want to find guys that are going to be lower owned. Or in the second half of that question was, are we against line stacking in cash games?
Yeah, that was the question. Are you? And I assume for the newer people, that means full stacking, because the most you can put in a lineup is 4 on FanDuel, I think 5 on DraftKings. 4 players from the same team, or three guys and a defenseman from the same team in your cash game lineup.
Right. No, I think that line stacking in cash games is a risky play, right? Which is something you kind of want to avoid, because at the end of the day, if that team hits a goose egg and they score 0 goals, you're in trouble. That lineup is probably ruined. I'm big on mini stacks where, you still get that correlation in case a center and a winger, combine for 2 points together. But I definitely prefer to break it down and maybe throw in that two different defensemen from neither of my stacks that I know are going to get a lot of minutes and power play time. So I personally, and I think it's a good rule of thumb, the more you stack, right, the more reward you can get out of it if it hits, but you are taking a risk the more players you have from one team. Like I said, teams can score with 0-1. Like teams can score 2 goals, and none of your guys are involved in any of them. And then 4 players get you single digits. It's tough to win most of the time.
Yeah, cash games, low risk lineups, really about mitigating that risk, getting guys who are on the ice a lot, having lots of opportunities, but not having the downfall if they get blanked on the scoreboard. So also
in baseball, right? Like
right.
With baseball, you have the best players can give you a goose egg, and you don't want to make that your cash game strategy, just loading up on entire teams.
Right. It's not like NBA where it's consistent scoring and we can project it very easily. It's still an event-based sport where one goal can shoot you up the leaderboard or down if you have the opposing goalie. So also, I'd be remiss to say that I forgot the last part of his question, which is more of a statement. Greg said, "I'm fairly new to hockey, but I killed it in preseason." So applause to you, Greg. Clearly, you've learned from us.
Preseason gang, hashtag preseason. And everybody, it's crazy. Soon they're going to be, scrimmage DFS, inter squad scrimmage.
Right. Yeah. Training camp, red blue practice. Yeah. All right. Question 2, Michael Stepney, actually one of our original followers. So shout out to Mr. Stepney here. 2-part question. What is your optimal strategy for smaller? He says short game slates. I assume that means 3, 4, 5 game slates.
Like tomorrow. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Tomorrow. And then number 2, how do you navigate the early part of the season?
I hate to keep beating this horse, but look, number 1, it's hard to generalize because it comes down to projected ownership, right? Like you could have a 4-game slate where half the people are on one team. You could have another 4-game slate where it's spread evenly, right, across the board, and you would play those totally different. So it really comes down to what the projected ownership is telling us, what the line movement and implied team totals are telling us. And each slate is really different. It's just like, if you might have a 4-game slate where all 4 games are incredibly close and feature kind of questionable goaltending. You might have a 4-game slate where there are 2 teams with like a minus 250 money line, right? So it's important to almost not go into it thinking there's already an optimal strategy ahead. It really comes down to the projected ownership and how we can leverage it to our advantage.
Yep, completely. It's just going to continue to come down to watching each slate, reading the daily plug, and figuring out the best way to approach that specific night. Okay, question 3, Schmitty Bear, another one of our members.
The last part of it was, I think, how to navigate through the early part of the season, right? Which is always an interesting question in any sport. I think the best way, you obviously want to, with like anything, mitigate your risk until we get a little more data and see exactly, the changes that have happened. Where are guys, how are teams rolling out certain lines with new coaches? Sometimes you have differing philosophies with even like how teams use both of their power play lines. So the best thing you can do early on is kind of like take mental note as you see these things unfold, right? Like power play usage is a big thing to keep an eye out on, right? Seeing, and this gets kind of granular if you don't follow hockey as often, but when are coaches letting their top line, like what lines are getting offensive zone draws, right? And which guys are getting put in positions to score goals at the end of the day. But the big thing, time on ice, kind of want to see the lines, chemistry, how new guys fit with one another. And as always, just mitigate your risk early.
Yeah, completely agree. And honestly, that's a great time. Not that any time isn't a great time, but the early season is perfect for satellites.
Yeah,
there's a lot of uncertainty. Fade the popularity if we're unsure of certain things, and it's a good time to try to earn some tickets. So
yeah, like you can make 12 lineups in a 4-game slate tomorrow for $3, and you might find yourself with a good chance to get a $33 ticket for it.
Yeah, especially if there's overlay. So good call there. Okay, final question from Schmitty Bear, one of our longtime members here. Do you go with a 3-team stack most of the time? Maybe forward defenseman, forward. What is your primary stacking? I know me personally, I'll say generally I always, especially if I'm playing satellites, I know it's a cookie cutter answer. I always like to go 4 and 4 if I can somehow stack 4 guys from one team, 4 guys from another that share the ice. for most of their skating time. That's what I try to do. Lead, what's your approach for as far as stacking goes? Especially, I think this is mostly for higher risk.
Right. And it's a great question, right? I try not to once again limit myself to, having a specific belief. I think me personally, my tendency, I do tend to, stack two teams, but then also sprinkle in like one or two players of value, whether it's a winger or a defenseman. I never isolate a center. Like I'll never play a center without anyone else on their team, unless it's like a freakish, like, satellite entry in a weird, like 3-game slate where I really want to differentiate, you know what I mean? And it might pair a center with a defenseman. But for the most part, it really comes down to making it fit, right? How can I optimize my projected output while staying under the salary? Some nights it might be a 3-team stack. Some nights it's a 2-team stack when a specific line has a lot of value in it, right? So keep an open mind. That's the only advice I give. They're all acceptable, like 2-team stacks, 3-team stacks, 4-team mini stacks, having 2 stacks with 2 random defensemen on either team, having, the 4 by 4 stack with a defenseman from the power play. Like all of those are winning formulas. Make no mistake about it. There isn't like a rule of thumb where you can't do that.
And we've seen all those lineup constructions win satellites, win tickets, win GPP. So like you said, it's what you feel is best. Just try to get correlation as much as you can, because that's the key to daily fantasy hockey. So
right. It's the battle between, correlation is the priority, and then higher risk contest differentiation, right? I remember, you won a, because usually like you're not going to, like if you fit the 2 most popular stacks in a lineup, you're probably going to have other people with the same lineup, right? Now, you, on the other hand, I think when you won, it was with the Montreal Canadiens, and was it the Islanders, or?
It was certainly the Islanders. I remember that.
It was a very low-owned stack, but that's why you were able to get the 4x4. No one else had those 2 teams, right? But you might find if you're on a popular stack, right, then your other stack, you might want it to be low ownership, or you might want to pivot with an island winger or defenseman that isn't on either team.
Yep, all about thinking outside the box and just differentiating yourself from the crowd in the popular place. So, all right, I know I'm excited. The season starts tomorrow. Here's a quick rundown of what you should do. So 1, go read our beginner strategy guide up on occupyfantasy.com. It's under the guides tab on the menu at the very top. It's free always. 2, check out the daily plug. It'll be posted every day, roughly between noon and 3 p.m. Eastern. Consider it your roadmap for that night slate. Give you optimal strategy for how to win. Check out the Occupy model if you're interested and you're a more advanced player. It'll give you every single player on DraftKings and FanDuel ranked according to their salary and expectation at all positions. It'll also rank the best lines for you to stack, as well as the best power plays for you to stack based on that night's expectations. Lead, we're going to see you on any Periscopes or any podcast appearances this year. We're trying to get some more media out there for our NHL guys.
I think so. If that's what the people want. I'm not afraid to show my face. I don't have that same 8 TV setup as you, but no, I'd happily answer any questions, and always feel free to @ me directly at PC_lead or at the Occupy account. We're usually on top of it and get back to folks. But yeah, we'll have something to engage the audience with for certain slates, whether it's a podcast or a Periscope.
Absolutely. So if you're interested and you really like what we've had to say, occupyfantasy.com, become a member. It's the cheapest, and when I say cheapest, the least expensive membership you can get in the industry, because we want to help people grow their bankrolls. And you can't do it if you're paying a shit ton of money each month for advice. So occupyfantasy.com, follow us on Twitter at occupyfantasy. If you like this podcast, obviously we're going to have more every single week for different sports. Subscribe your favorite podcast app. Just search Occupy Fantasy. Subscribe, and you'll get your latest episode to your phone. Okay.
And if none of this made any sense, all is not lost. Right? We're talking on a podcast, and I'm trying my best to kind of take something and make it simple, but just read the strategy guide. It is very simple. Like, you'll feel like smart after 5 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just read that and you'll feel much more comfortable about making your first lineup on opening night. So, all right, for Walid, I'm Brian. Appreciate everyone listening. Let's have a profitable NHL season. Let's keep our bankrolls in check. Let's grow it slowly with chances every single month to hit that big score. If we don't hit it, really hope one of our members hits it. But believe me, it may sound like bullshit to you, but we appreciate and we love it so much more when our members hit big rather than we hit big. So, guys and girls, go do it. Follow our strategy, and let's all have a great and profitable NHL season. So, Lead, appreciate you coming on. Appreciate you guys. Look out tomorrow, opening night. All of our content will be here, occupyfantasy.com. Appreciate you listening. Take care, and good luck this season.
Yep. See you on the Daily Plug.